Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Imagine a justice system where rehabilitation is prioritized over punishment, where every American, regardless of the race, color, or creed, is truly equal before the law. Hi, my name is Kiana Bird, and today we will embark on a journey where we will address and explore the ever urgent need for the reform of our justice system in America. Um, especially for the African Americans who are disproportionately challenged within its confines. So African Americans make up a disproportionately larger percentage of incarcerated individuals in the United States. As of 2022, according to prisoninitiative.org, Black people were admitted to jail at more than 4 times the rate of their white counterparts and stayed in jail more days on average. And in 2023, nearly 2 million people, disproportionately Black, are living in prisons and jails compared to the 1970s when that number was 360,000. This issue goes beyond mere statistics. It strikes the chord of and looks at the commitment of our country to justice and fairness. These racial discrepancies within the criminal justice system um, have far-reaching consequences in the African American society, where as it pertains to the cycle of poverty, to breaking up of familial bonds, and the eroding of a system that was not created equal after all. So racism in and of itself is going to be the primary driver of racial disparities in the community in the criminal justice system. Some, however, may argue that these disparities are in fact in place because of the higher rates of crimes in the African American community. But this speech is going to illuminate the stark reality of these racial disparities. We're going to explore the historical roots that bolster these and we're also going to address the counter arguments for this view. So let's explore the first topic: racial disparities in the U.S. criminal justice system are unyielding and undeniable. According to the NAACP, Black men are more than 6 times as likely to be incarcerated as a white man. Nationally, 1 in 81 Black adults in the U.S. serving time in prison. Also, there was a study by there was a journal by in Kamalu, the racist disparities of sentencing. And she states that upon further review of the U.S. Department of Bureau of Justice statistics, it shows that 592,462 people that were in prison in local jails, of those, the African American population alone was 244,000. That's going to be 41.2%. So these statistics, they underscore the blatant disparities that persist within our criminal justice system. They paint a picture that the system that we're in, the color of your skin often determines the severity of your your punishment. So this is not merely a statistical anomaly; it's a deeply entrenched issue with profound consequences within my community. For example, Michael Brown, he was an unarmed Black man. He was shot 12 times because he fit the description of a robber. Eric Gardner, he was accused of selling loose cigarettes and resulted in his death by kneeling on his neck by a police officer. Walter Scott, also unarmed. He was stopped because his third brake light was out. He was shot 8 times as he tried to flee. So the list is endless, but does the punishment really fit the crime? A comprehensive study by the ACLU revealed that African Americans are more likely to be stopped by police, arrested, and subjected to excessive force during encounters with law enforcement. In a research article by Jennifer Emberhart, studying police stops, she began with a study of 588 of 588 drivers. Of the vehicle stops of Black drivers conducted during the 1 month in this culturally diverse city, nearly 1 in 6 Black drivers were stopped while driving during this 1 month period. Less than 1% whites. Of the 577 stops, 56 resulted in handcuffing, 24 arrests across a total of 81 stops. 62 of the 76 searches resulted in no firearms or drugs. This highlights the systematic nature of these discrepancies, and it's not just about sentencing; it's also about the interactions that we have with the citizens, that law enforcement has with citizens. So this data also suggests there's an unequal treatment that demands our attention and our action. So since we have established the significance of the racial disparities, we have to address the historical roots. Slavery plays a major factor in the significance. It's a significant historical factor when it comes to racial disparities in our history. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. Um, in the Jim Crow era, brought about segregation. So the ratification of the 14th Amendment technically granted equal protection rights to African Americans, but as it eroded the Black Code laws, it also established and set in place and practiced the Jim Crow laws. So these were swiftly set in place. In the 1900s, the local municipalities began to establish police departments to enforce the local laws, including Jim Crow laws. The police exerted excessive force, brutality, where African Americans were violated. That African Americans who violated any Jim Crow laws were harshly punished, according to the NAACP. So the criminalization of the infractions effectively limited the opportunities of African American community. Black voting rights were suppressed. Black people were socially segregated. They were relegated to menial occupations. They were placed in inferior schools. They were in dilapidated housing and defunct facilities. So as we wrap up just a portion of our history that highlights as we wrap a portion of our history that just highlights the way slavery affected this, we're gonna look at also how the fact of the roots of the racial disparities how they date back to slavery in the post Civil War era. These they did something called convict leasing. So convict leasing was where jails basically leased humans, out to other people to serve them and to build railroads and such like that, and they were able to treat them any way they saw fit. So that was basically a second slavery. So as we address those roots, we have to also address the counter argument. So a lot of people believe that the disparities are there because there's a higher rate of crime in the Black community. So it's essential to acknowledge that the rates of the very different communities in some cities suggest that African American communities experience higher crime rates. A report by the Bureau of Justice indicates that some categories of African Americans have higher rates, particularly for violent crimes. The FBI Uniform Crime Reporting data shows that certain areas, African American people are arrested for certain offenses. The evidence that supports the perspective, the evidence supports the perspective that crime among this racial group may be what's contributing to the higher disparities in the criminal justice system. It also suggests that law enforcement may be responding to actual crimes in these areas. While it's important to consider the various crime rates, it's equally important to recognize that data does not provide the complete picture. It's not enough to explain the variances in crime rates, the racial discrimination, the arrests, the sentencing, the incarceration rates. Acknowledge the other side, while it's essential, it does not diminish the significance of systemic racism. The contribution that contributes to the racial injustice in our justice system. The weight of the evidence and the persistence of disparities it highlights the need for systematic reform. Now that we've considered that alternative perspective, throughout the speech we've gone through understanding the racial disparities, the historical roots, and also the systemic racism while addressing the opposed view. Our thesis remains intact, though. Systemic racism is the driving force of the racial disparities within the criminal justice system. In closing, we stand in a critical time for justice and equality in our system, and I want you to remember throughout this. I want you to remember that we stand at this critical junction. The urgency of this issue cannot be overstated. We need to demand change. We have to rise for justice and remember that a threat to injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you.